Here's what we do.
Give ready.
Acknowledge the precision. Acknowledge the precision.
Ain't no time for hesitation.
I need more enlightenment, I guess, on what, because again, it still feels blurred to me on what feminism is. Like, I've been trying to read books. The distinction of feminism and womanism. I mean, it's easy to say white folks, black women, white folks, and they did their thing, and now when black women have their own movement, so to speak. But a lot of times, I mean, this is just from two perspectives. Mm-hmm. But when I go out into the street, a lot of womanists act like feminists. So I'm still confused.
A lot of them have just had negative, I don't want to say negative experiences, but they've, their life experiences have taught them that it's important to, that their womanhood is important, and that there are certain threats to their womanhood, right. And those are very real experiences, so we don't want to diminish that. They may not be, versed in, in the philosophy itself. They may be underinformed about that. Okay. And even I encounter people like that, and we're all growing, and you know what I mean?
Okay, so I dig that. And I'm one of those people that, like, if you say you are something, you better damn well have all the education about it before you call yourself that.
Right, but I could go to church right now and be like, and they'll be like, raise your hand and say this, and then now I'm in the club. You know what I mean? So, sometimes that happens.
Get me started on the church.
Well, I'm sorry. I was using that as an example of just philosophies that people latch on to. Like people will see a video clip of Malcolm X, right? Mm-hmm. But he has an entire story. He has an entire movement and a work that he was trying to create. And if you look, at the person's life or their work, it doesn't really reflect that. And it's just that, people, latch on it. It's like anything. There are people who will latch on to it, and then, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have all the language. You know what I mean? Got
it. Okay, so Kiki Camille says on Facebook, how is feminism not inclusive? The way basic, Lord, let me look at mine. The very basic premise of it is that a woman should not be treated differently or ostracized simply because they're women. Wait, is that a question or is that a statement? However, the spectrum in which was women can identify as feminists is quite wide. I'm confused on how wominists are different or not, at least a subset of feminism.
While feminists have no problem taking into consideration issues of sexism and genderism, most of your white feminists, especially during the time period of the 1970s, when this movement was first originated, were racist, unfortunately. And so our white sisters refused to allow our African American sisters to participate in many demonstrations and marches. For example, during the civil rights movement of the 1960s, many white feminists refused to join in solidarity with African American women who were a part of the civil rights movement. And so we see, unfortunately, as I said earlier, the problem with oppression is that people who are the victims of oppression usually become oppressors themselves to another group of people. So, for example, many African Americans rage against racism, right, and are the first to say something against racism. Currently, in this society today, many people will say something about Black Lives Matter and NFL protests. Many African Americans will get behind that and say, let us support Colin Kaepernick. However, that same African American community will stay quiet around issues of LGBT concerns. So we're not talking about in the Black community how so many African American trans persons are being murdered and are dying. That hasn't picked up steam the way protesting the NFL has. We've remained quiet about that. We're not talking about the high rate of trans murders happening in this country. And so the concern is, if you are an African American woman who embraces feminism, you have to take into consideration that many feminists probably will not embrace all of the ways in which you as a black woman are oppressed.
Yeah, and my comment about being inclusive, feminism not being inclusive, was more in the respects of male bashing, and the air of, you know, men are not needed and they have no purpose, and these are a lot of stances that I've heard a lot of feminists take. You know, same gender loving feminists and, you know, the other side of the spectrum. But piggybacking off of another thing that you said, Danielle, that is, and I've spoken about this quite a few times, I mean, on my own show, the duality of being a black gay man and not receiving the support from my own black community as being a gay man. You know, when I stand on my platform as a black man, people are like, right on, we right behind you, brother. But when I stand on the other platform, they're like, ooh, all right, let me look around, see what else is going on. And we're here, you know what I mean? We're in the churches. We're standing right next to you. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And we're fighting the fight as well. And I am a black man, so of course I support the fight, but I don't get that same support from my black people, my black women and my black men, you know? I've had some experiences in the workplace recently, you know, with my black women that have just been mind blowing.
I totally understand,
man. They've been mind blowing. Phone is ringing.
Phone is ringing. Oh,
hello?
Lord. Hold on.
I'm making somebody mad. They about to call. Come on. Let's do it.
This is Alternative Thought. What's your name and where you calling from?
This is Mark Carter, calling from the west side.
Prophet, what's going on?
That's what's going on. Hey, I guess I have to break down what I was, I guess, trying to say or said. And that is that, and I'm glad that the pastor, you know, gave the distinction, you know, between the feminist movement and what you call the womanist movement.
Right.
Not to say that a woman has got to bow down to a man. That's not what I'm saying. But with this feminist mindset, which, in my opinion, come from white women, like the sister said, that these white women hate black men, and they're teaching these black women to hate black men.
Mark, I ain't gonna even lie, brother. You got these people raising their eyebrows hard.
But we're listening.
I'm getting to y'all straight now. I'm getting to y'all straight. Look, there's nothing wrong with a black woman who chooses to love women. You know, you don't have to hate men because you chose to love women. That's your business. But don't raise up on us. If you raise up on us, you know what I'm saying, we're going to give you just what you're looking for. Come up on us with that shit, you know what I mean? That man hates stuff.
So that's an example of hypermasculinity. So I'm sorry, that's an example of hypermasculinity because you're trying to talk about issues concerning African American males, but you are inflicting violence in your conversation. So do you see, Maurice, where we're going? That was a live experiential learning of this conversation.
And you say it is in a black man's nature to be violent.
To kill.
To kill. Where is that? How is that even? That's a generalization, a huge generalization that's part of perpetuating this hypermasculinity, this toxic masculinity, this violence.
You can say whatever. You can say whatever, you know what I'm saying, the liberal movement has taught you to say. I'm gonna say.
The liberal movement has not taught me to say anything. Okay. Anything that I say is because of my experience and the truth that I live in. Nothing, I haven't been taught anything. Let's get that straight.
That's why we have the concerns that we have. What if we lived in a society today where our African American men, those who feel empowered to be provider, king, prophet, and protector, actually went out and talked to some of these black boys shooting each other instead of having discussions on the radio about gender roles?